having done a lot of integrations, the biggest problem is time.
And could you use an example of somebody that has been successful in building?
The first thing you've got to go through is, do I actually care about the end market?
What does acquiring multiple businesses to grow your primary business look like? We're talking about growth by acquisition. Hi, I'm Jaryd Krause. I'm the host of the Buying Online Business podcast. And today I'm speaking with Matt Person, who is a seasoned corporate strategist, investor, and an M&A expert with over 25 years of experience helping companies build and capture enterprise value. Currently SVP of corporate development at QuickBase, which is a Vista equity-backed SaaS platform. He's also founded Town Square Advisory, where he created the Square Management System, which is a proprietary framework that drives high performance through alignment, culture, and organizational design built for constrained independence of entrepreneurs and acquirers. Prior, he led global corporate development, deal execution, and growth strategy for an enterprise SaaS firms like IDG and Green Street Advisors, as well as worked in investment banking and strategy consulting. Now, Matt combines deep tech and financial expertise with operational leadership and passion for building winning teams for these businesses. And on this episode, we talk about how you can not only buy great online businesses and scale them, but also structure them and your own mindset to replace your income and create a life of freedom through acquiring multiple businesses through growth by acquisition to build one great portfolio. We talk about what criteria first-time acquirers should have. We then move into his squared management system, which has 4 pillars and 10 elements to each pillar, making up 4 key pieces to a solid management system. And then we dive deep into how to merge 2 businesses together or multiple businesses together for people that are looking at acquiring a business and growing that business by acquiring more businesses and running them alongside or merging them together. We talk about the steps involved, how long it takes, cultural fit, management, systems, and then scaling both of those businesses together. We also move into mindsets. You know, I love this. And what are the mindset that people need if they're acquiring and building a portfolio of multiple online businesses? And then he also shares some characteristics of a successful portfolio builder. We talk about why lame businesses are the best businesses and what those lame, boring businesses actually look like in the online space. Now, we talk so much about acquiring businesses. If you haven't got my due diligence framework, it's free. Get it. There'll be a link in that. It's in the description. It's saved people millions of dollars and made people millions of dollars. It's what I use and what my clients use to acquire businesses, and it takes the guesswork out of it. Now, go away and enjoy the pod. I'm sure you're going to love it. Matthew, a fellow Aussie for 6 months. Welcome to the podcast.
6 great months. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, just for context, Matt just shared with me that he was living in Perth in Western Australia and got to travel around Oz a little bit. About 15 years ago now, Matt.
More though. I hate to say it, 25 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 25 years ago. But I did make it all the way around from Bunbury all the way up to Exmouth and loved every minute of it.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at buying a Toyota Land Cruiser and 4-wheel drive and decking it out, doing a rooftop conversion and just putting Starlink in it and just doing surf trips in Western Australia. I'm looking at maybe doing it early next year or the year after. Because, I mean, Western Australia is just so phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah. It's, I tried to learn how to surf. The audience can't tell. I'm tall. I'm about 6'7".
Oh, wow. You're 6'7". Okay.
Yeah.
So you're like a 15-foot longboard then or something.
Yeah, it didn't go well. I was definitely an embarrassment, and you could tell I didn't belong out there. But I tried to live up to it.
I mean, surfing is so difficult. I once lived in Panama and worked as a surf guide and surf coach. And I mean, been surfing for most of my life and I know how tough it is. No matter whether you're tall or short, you know, whatever size you are, it's probably one of the hardest things to get into.
It is. It's fun. Yeah. It was a ton of fun. I enjoyed it, but wasn't meant for me, as I'll stick to golf and baseball.
Stick to golf and just making people a lot of money in business.
Yeah, I like that. I could talk shop all day. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's why we're here. So you've worked in many high-stake acquisitions, corporate development roles. And now I want to ask you, for someone looking to buy their first online business, what would you say the top three like strategic criteria to be evaluating and looking for in a business beyond just like revenue and traffic?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first one's almost non-operational to a degree.
Mm,
Uh, you got to have an interest in the industry the business is in. And I think that's one thing I see oftentimes because I've been on the sell side as an investment banker. I'm on the buy side mainly now. I've operated businesses. The first thing you've got to go through is, do I actually care about the end market, the audience, the ideal customer profile? Do I actually have an interest here? Um, I think you personally just kind of need that, even if you're looking at a passive investors, because that helps you get engaged and understand what this business is doing. The next part of it is partly around that. A lot of people don't squarely understand the problem this business is trying to solve, for who, for why, and how it's differentiated. There's a lot of companies that look good on paper, but you really have to understand how it's making money, why it's actually able to compete in the market, if that position is something that is defensible or not. Most
mm,
businesses start to struggle when they get to a certain point in revenue, partly because they've carved out a little bit of a niche for themselves. They have a little bit of traction with a couple of customers, but getting past that's the big point. Um, you know, 3 or 4 million is kind of where this natural stop occurs. And some companies just can't seem to get past it. And it's primarily because they don't understand the market well enough to know how they're going to get past that point for creating value in the audience. And that's the big rub for a lot of people. So if you don't know the audience, you don't know the business, you don't have a passion about it, you're never going to figure out how you're going to get past that mark.
yeah, I love that. You definitely need to understand the avatar. But I wouldn't like to just call an avatar. You really need to get into the human side of why are people purchasing your product or service, and where are you not following up with them and adding more and more value and going deeper and deeper, and to provide. And that's how you get past that 3 to 4 mil range in revenue, is understanding their whole life cycle and their buyer's journey of like how they discover you, why they're using your product, and then what's next for them. Do they need to buy more products? Is it a consumable business, and they're purchasing it multiple times? Or can you help them further? Like what's their next problem that they have? And can you do upsells and downsells and sideways sells? And if you've got a product, can you offer a service? If you've got a service, can you offer a product? As an example, right? Is that what you see?
Yeah, I 100% what I see. And I think, if you start to dig into the metrics, you talked about one key thing, the upsells, the downsells. So when you get into those online businesses and you have that prototypical SaaS subscription revenue,
Mm,
you can start to see the ebb and flow in basically the expand revenue, and the quantum of conversions coming over from new revenue. And yeah, you need the new revenue, right? Everyone needs new interest coming in. But how are you doing once they're there? And there are a ton of businesses that I see that have really bad conversion rates. And they're like, yeah, no, we've hit 6, 7 million. We're growing a couple percent a year. And I'm like, yeah, your funnel is basically keeping you going because you're
mm.
just dropping off.
Bleeding.
Yeah.
Yeah, the churn's crazy, right?
You're bleeding on churn and you have no expand revenue because you haven't really figured out, again, your customer profile. So what are they doing? They get there, they like it. It's not compelling enough. They might use it for a period of time. They fall off. There's no hook to keep them there or to add revenue. And so you end up having this business that's just surviving based on its churn. It's dying on its churn. It's surviving on its flow in. And that all then parlays back to that knowing your customer and why they're buying and why they're staying.
Yeah. It's crazy to see how much ROI people like that or businesses like that are leaving on the table when they have got their customer acquisition strategy just absolutely nailed, but they don't have their customer lifetime value nailed, and they are leaving so much more money on the table. Like they figured out the hardest part really, which is, I would say, acquisition of customers.
Right.
And the best part where you just increase your customer lifetime value is those retention strategies. And people might be leaving within a couple of months. Why are they leaving? What are you not helping them with? And can you work out what you can help them with so they can stay? I think some of the best software businesses are the businesses that are really sticky, where people just can't. They're using a tool and they just can't leave because the price is so good, the value is so good for what they're getting, and or their whole team is involved in
It's
using
ingrained in
that.
your workflows. If you can find something that's ingrained in your workflow, I have products I've been using for 15 years, and I can't get rid of it. I'm reliant on it, even if I
Mm,
don't want to use it. I have to because I know it. It's part of it. I mean, there was the part of that is pricing and packaging. There was a company I was looking at. It was doing about 6 or 7 million, but it had
mm,
been stuck in this range forever. So it had gotten a little bit above that, 3 or 4 million threshold, but it was stuck. And when you looked at the pricing, they said, "Well, yeah, we charge managers, but everyone else is free." And I was like, "Excuse me?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, it's unlimited. But if you're a manager, you have to pay." And I'm like, "Well, how many managers per contract are there?" And he's like, 1 to 2. And I'm like, "Okay, I got it." So like you basically are giving away the product for all the other end users. You should be pricing a seat on a seat license basis, and they weren't. You could double that business really quickly just you know, by changing their pricing and packaging.
yeah, absolutely. And it just takes really somebody outside the business to see that as well, most of the time.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. And so typically, I see people will find it's not just their business model that will struggle to get them to the next level, but also their team and their structure. And, sometimes you get to that level and you need to reinvent the team or change roles and then add more people in, maybe remove somebody that's not as productive and get somebody else in, depending on what's most important. I want to talk about your Square management system.
Sure.
You know, how does, organizational design and culture alignment play a role in, ensuring an acquisition actually delivers value, not
It's
just
a
on
great
paper?
question. Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll let the audience know what the Square management system is in a second. But
Yeah.
the reason that it's helpful, the reason it's important when you talk about a team, especially at certain sizes, is there definitely, and I didn't appreciate this until I started to get to businesses of other sizes. I've spent most of my time in what I would call the lower middle market, but I have worked for a huge 5,050 country operation. It was owned by Blackstone, um,
Mm,
and then been in different varying degrees of size since then in the private equity back world. And there are people who are comfortable at a certain level that almost don't want to or don't know how to operate above a certain level of scale. They get afraid of that size. I don't know if I know how to do this. I don't know if I can manage this. I don't know how to get to this thing. And the biggest difference, frankly, between a large, super large business and a small one is it's communication and your systems and just making sure you have the guardrails in place. And so a lot of people, at a small level, they have the idea and they can launch and they get to a certain point and they kind of go, either two things happen. One, I don't want to screw this up. I made it. Hey, I'm at 6, 7 million bucks. I can pay myself a decent salary now. The wheel's going. I don't want to blow it up.
hmm
And then they kind of just stop. Or they freak out and they go, I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't know how to actually do this. And then they
mm,
stop.
yeah.
So systems and having people on your team who have seen what good looks like at varying sizes, that's critical because if there's a big stop, it's the people who are afraid of moving forward. That fear of inexperience, you start sandbagging, you start stopping, you kind of stop. What the Square management system is for the audience is a proprietary methodology I put together that helps executives, founders understand systems, understand processes and procedures, the link between how those connected pieces, and there's 40 of them in the methodology, can create an operating structure to help you scale. So if you're sitting there going, I'm one of those people, have an honest reflection of yourself. I'm one of those people. I'm stuck. I don't really know how to get past this point. What do I need to do to help my business scale? This system can help you do that. If you go to my website, townsquare-advisors.com, you can learn about the Square management system. The thesis is relatively simple. What is the output? If the system, the methodology is the process, the output is called constrained independence. And constrained independence is nothing more than the culture of your company. It is the level of guardrails that you put on your employees. So you, Jaryd, you might be what I would call a light level of constraint guy. You don't want anyone telling you what to do. You want all the autonomy to decide. You want the freedom to action your own ideas. That's a lightly constrained environment. Some people really want it very tight environment. They don't want to make any decisions. They just want to be told what to do. That's, again, the natural cap. Just tell me what to do at this point. I don't know how to do it. That's a
Yeah.
heavy level of constraint. Good culture results when, very simply, when your level, your way of doing it, all those systems and processes and your beliefs map to the company's. And that can be quantified and known and understood and instructed and intentionally put together to create this organizational structure. And so the system has 40 elements across 10 sites to create the guardrails that you would put together to help yourself scale the right way, to know all those systems and processes to keep yourself organized. I can deep dive heavily into this, but for the group, that's effectively what you need to do as you start to scale, is to understand the systems and processes that are going to help you kind of keep everything together.
Yeah, absolutely. And then having the right people in the right seat to be able to run those systems
Correct.
processes, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Where do you sit in like creating a process in the system first and then hiring, or hiring somebody that has already worked in, and you alluded to it before, is already worked in a larger organization, similar or exactly like what you would want to build as a business owner, and hiring them in to create and run those systems to get you to the next level that you might not even as an owner know how to create those systems to get there. Where do you sit with that? Because there's different horses for different courses, and I'm sure and I guess that would be dependent on how much autonomy and freedom the business owner would like as well, versus like controlled structure.
That's right. Honestly, that's a great question. And I mean, the answer here depends a little bit on what you said around who's the decider on what the right level of guardrails or constraint is for the business. If you're a founder and you don't know what good looks like at scale, and you want to bring someone in externally to help you put all those processes together, you would do this, leverage the square management system with that person. You'd do it together with them. Yeah. And the reason why you would do it with them is to prevent them from going ad hoc outside of what you want for the company. You're still the owner of the company. You have a say there. You have a desired culture and output. You shouldn't let them run wild. Otherwise, then they're going to be the ones who would set the desired level of constraint, and that output level may not be the level of the resulting output may not be what the culture you want for the company. And that's just a key thing to keep in mind. If you're a more passive founder, you would probably then turn over the rails and let the executive team do it themselves and build it themselves. So the system applies to everybody, to founders, to mature company CEOs as a diagnostic, and to individuals. You got to know who you are. If you want to sit out in a beanbag and a laptop, you're not going to fit in a company that makes you go to the office 5 days a week and wear a suit and tie, right? That sounds very elementary and simple, but in theory, that's effectively what this system preaches is you have to know who you are as an employee too. You have to know where you succeed, because if you take the wrong job, you're your life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the founder or the executive team needs to live and breathe, the culture, and it needs to come from them. And I see the best businesses, and most of them are online, are the ones that the owners and the executive team love to travel, and they actually encourage it in their employees, and they connect based on their lifestyle. And then work comes up secondary. Not secondary, but like obviously work is important, but right. Everybody lives the same lifestyle. And then because they appreciate that lifestyle, that love of life pours over into their work, and they build better businesses, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Talk to me about investment banking. You did this for a little bit. What did you learn from investment banking, and then what did that lend to in what you do now in acquisitions and exits?
Yeah, investment banking was one of the more entertaining and interesting periods of my career. I had come off over a decade of executive management, building companies, and mainly in the lower middle market. And I had then I was burnt out and did the business school thing, if only because I didn't know what to do with myself, and it sounded like a better time than trying to find a job. It was in my tenure in business school, I was introduced to someone in an investment bank who said, hey, if you're interested in understanding how to capture that value, you know how to create it, but if you don't know how the process of capturing it is, you should figure this out. Mm-hmm. And I think for like a lot of people, you read the newspaper and you see, X company bought X business for billions and billions. You're like, how does that happen?
How did it happen?
And
yeah.
that was the whim of curiosity that got me into investment banking. And I learned a ton about exactly that, how it happens, which is really, interesting, but more so where value gets applied. There's one thing to create value in a company. It's another thing to capture it. And there are
You mean
definitely,
capture as in acquire it, like acquire a business that's providing value, you mean? Is that what you're talking about?
well, capturing value in a transaction process. So
Yeah.
if you're selling your business, what does an acquirer, and this parlays to the buy side, what does an acquirer look for that's going to command a premium over just a regular business? What are the decisions you need to make as an operator, as an executive, to ensure that you're doing the right thing? Because not every decision is the right decision for the company. When you're looking at it from an exit value perspective. And so understanding all those nuances was instrumental, and especially on the buy side, and just making sure that I could do that. But when you run a company, you really want to make sure you know what attributes the market's going to look for.
And yeah, absolutely. And as an investment banker, did you get given a budget and then go away and look at what to acquire and for who and why, or was it completely different?
Usually as a sell side investment banker, you're trying to find the right companies to represent to sell them. So we spend a lot of time pitching companies to our services and saying, hey, if you are going to sell, you would hire us, and here's all the reasons why. And then we actually go execute against that and sell the company and try to get a premium value for it. So in order to pitch a business, you have to know how to, again, where value sits, why it's valuable, how it stands out. What are the operating metrics? What are the financial metrics? It goes back to that aforementioned, know the market, know the demand, know the use case, your ideal customer profile, and why you differentiate. Because the buyer of a business for premium is going to pay you for what you've done, plus they think you can do.
Yeah.
And what you can do is where you get the money. And companies need to see the continuity from legacy performance into future growth. So you have to have a story to tell about how you can not only just separate yourself and continue the momentum, but also achieve it. Because everyone out there, everyone knows the hockey stick, right? The projections that are unrealistic. Wait a second, I've been growing 5%. And now I'm magically for sale and I'm going to grow 25% for the next 5 years. How are you actually going to go capture that growth? How are you actually going to take the projections that you've put on paper and actually achieve them? If you can convince the seller that you have that capability, you're going to win every time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So flipping that from the sell side to the buy side, most people listening are looking at acquiring a business, and you've got a bunch of experience on the sell side and you've got experience on the buy side as well.
That's right.
From being in this space, PE-backed acquisitions, what sort of deal structure, elements, earnouts, terms do you believe are most sort of favorable for an acquirer in terms of like safety?
Well, in terms of safety, it's risk mitigation against the future value creation.
Mm.
So you go back to the projections. Everyone loves a revenue multiple as a seller.
As a
And I
seller,
could go
for
on,
sure. Yeah, but as a
and I could
buyer.
go, and not as a buyer, and I could go on a long diatribe about why I hate revenue multiples. We've kind of bastardized the terminology, and so risk mitigation as a buyer, get away from revenue multiples. Cash flow is everything. Even if you quote it on paper in a revenue multiple, have the ROI to know your return on investment thesis, what you need to capture, and have it down on cash flow and EBITDA and true EBITDA, because everybody is trying to price on subscription and also understand the true nature of their revenue, because there's recurring revenue, reoccurring revenue, true subscription revenue, and those are really materially different things when it comes to their characteristics and how that the conversion cycle goes from the revenue to the bottom line. And a lot of buyers, if you don't understand the difference, you can get screwed when you put a revenue multiple on a business that you think is a SaaS business and is really a reoccurring business, revenue business.
Yeah, let's go through the difference of those three. So you said recurring revenue, real recurring revenue, and what was that?
And subscription, yeah. So in order of importance, so everyone, I actually don't think project-based businesses are bad companies. There's investment banks are project-based businesses actually, and they're wonderfully successful. But everybody started looking at revenue multiples and looking at revenue businesses, and so we've tried to put subscriptions and everything. And that's why everyone pays now for service to things.
Yeah.
So what's happened though is we've taken the term subscription and defined it as, well, I'll give you access to something for a period of time. And that access is on subscription. So there's a lot of businesses that sell access for a period of time and call that subscription, which is not like your Netflix. A true subscription business is like your Netflix, and they're going to ping your credit card every single month. And when that happens, you're going to get that really consistent cash flow coming in because you've agreed to pay for it, or you get it all up front in advance, which is lovely, and you have a great deferred revenue balance. Recurring revenue is revenue that is never monthly. It might be on paper amortized monthly, but it's captured up front, and you have to negotiate the contract every single year. So a subscription like Netflix is just in perpetuity. They push down terms and conditions on you, and I got to cancel it at some point, but I got to go find the email.
The card's automatically charged. You don't reassess a contract each time.
Right.
The
exactly.
The same. Yeah.
It's already fixed, and they might push an update and say, now your contract is $8 and you can cancel if you want to versus 10. Recurring revenue is access for a period of time, but you're negotiating that contract every single time, and the price might change based on the needs. And so you're sitting down to do an assessment, but then you grant them that and the access. That's recurring revenue. It's still good. A lot of research businesses do that, when they have access to the research of the data analytics businesses do that. And then you have reoccurring revenue, which is for businesses that have actually probably a strong customer lifetime value, but the revenue's choppy. And it's because there's different needs along the way. And so a lot of professional services businesses fall into this, where, someone might need an audit here, they do this there, they change that there. And so the customer's always there. They might have been a customer in some form for 10 years, but the revenue is going to go up and down and ebb and flow based on the needs of the customer at that point in time. And so it's choppy. It can't be counted on for consistency. On an average basis, you might have a lump sum there, but it's not agreed to in advance. It's ad hoc in real time, and they just add and subtract services as they go.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for the explanation. It's very, very critical for people to understand the contracts and the difference between that type of revenue especially if you're going to be valuing the business for an acquisition based on, even if you're basing it based on profit or revenue, it's critical to know.
Even for profit, it's going to change the consistency of that margin on the line. So
yeah, absolutely. When people acquire businesses, what are the complexities that you see people have when taking over the business and integrating? If they've got a primary business and they're buying this as a growth by acquisition strategy, and they're trying to merge teams and systems and processes, what do you see some of the complexities, and how do you tackle those?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first part of it I'd give you as an answer to the last question. Risk mitigation as a buyer and earnouts. And when you get into deal structures as a buyer and you're doing an earnout, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do them because I've done them and they help bridge a gap in value. But when you do them, you are restricted from an integration perspective because you can't prevent them from then earning said earnout. And that changes then how you manage that company. If it's a platform investment and you're coming in and you're buying it and you're going to take over for the founder, and the founder's got some level of earnout, or they've done seller debt or something like seller note or something like that, then it's easier. And the problem there then becomes like, did you make the terms of said earnout so vague that you get into a fight? Because most people then end up paying the earnout even if they didn't actually earn it, which is the tough part about those earnouts.
Yeah.
Or you end up in litigation. You don't want to do that. So earnouts can be problematic in many ways. They really got to be granular. I would never do an earnout on the back of earnings. I would only do earnouts on revenue because it's easier to quantify. And I would probably do it as short as you possibly can to get yourself just away from it.
Yeah.
That said, when it comes to integration, I think the plan, and I'm doing an integration right now, having done a lot of integrations, the biggest problem is time. And people get so excited about the deal that they over-rotate on what they think they can do, and they forget about how hard integration is. And so most of the time M&A fails is because the integration doesn't work. And it's not because when we say M&A fails, as you know, it's not like the deal blew up and everyone lost all their money. It just didn't.
Still closes, but the goal of the acquirer didn't play out the way they may have seen it because they got too attached to just the acquisition and the numbers, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
100%. Yes, exactly. And so why did that happen? Because you got overzealous and you made all these assumptions and they were way too difficult to actually procure.
Yeah.
If people don't move fast enough as part of it, I mean, going through that right now with the company, and I'm kind of sitting there going, this will take 30, 60, 90 days. If we're talking after 90 days, then we haven't gone fast enough. And some of the people look at it with these big eyes. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm used to doing this in like 2 years. Nope. We're doing this in 30, 60, 90 day increments, maybe 120 days. And then we're integrated. We should be done. And that's the hard part. And then 2 is just the realistic approach to what you actually can achieve. Go-to-market synergies, they take longer to capture than you think. It's harder to get the traction. It's harder to get the cross-sell. I usually, in the first year of ownership, rarely put revenue synergies on an acquisition.
In the first year?
In the first year.
Yeah. And why is that? Is that, what we're talking about here is you buy, let's give an example. Say you already own an e-commerce business, and then you buy, and say it's in the dog space, dog products, pet products, and then you buy like a media business, like a blog or a YouTube channel. It takes you longer to start advertising your products on those media channels from your e-commerce business? Is that what you said?
I'd give it in the calendar year that you're in. I'd give it a delay to give yourself time, because it takes a little bit longer to get going on those revenue synergies than people think. Even if it's the first investment, you're buying a $500,000 online business, and you think, I'm going to double their marketing budget, and I'm going to start seeing that come in. It just never works that way. You got to give yourself time to stabilize the business, to learn it, to understand it, then start to deploy. So that even if you shrunk down my timetable, which might be more conservative, and said, well, maybe in the first 3 months I'll learn the business and then I'll get going. Even then, you're still a quarter to 2 quarters out. It just doesn't happen immediately on day one. You've got to give yourself some time to get in there and figure it all out before it really starts to manifest.
You don't want to do it in a scrappy, fast, messy way. You want to do it in a way that, like you say, you're going to sell those products to the audience of your media business. You don't just want to throw it in front of their face and just say, you buy this, and it's scrappy and things are broken and they, delivery times are off and whatnot. Right.
It's disruptive to the existing core that's there. And you've got to get going back to our commentary around the people and culture and the systems. You got to affect scale the right way. So if you come in with all these grandiose ideas about how you're going to scale and you don't really know the systems and the processes and the structures, you can push something forward and you won't be able to capture the revenue because you don't have the people. You may have missed. There's only so much you can learn in diligence. The hardest part. Hey, I'm going to spend all this money. I'm going to spend all this money to buy this company, and I get to talk to you for X amount of time, and I don't get to meet all your staff, and you got to go figure it out. So give yourself the time to kind of see what you bought and then start to scale it.
They're the key words, is like figuring it out. Like, you can acquire something and you have the assumption that you can grow it in a certain way. And that's just purely an assumption until you get a hold of the business and realize, actually, maybe there's some other complexities that are going to prevent me from doing this in the way that I thought. But maybe there's something else that I can do with the similar strategy, but in a different way, that it can help me achieve a far better result. But it might just take a little bit more time and to do it in the right way, versus just rush and trying to just pull money from the deal as fast as possible, when you should be buying the business and it should make its ROI stand alone without merging it or running it alongside your primary business. Right.
First 30 days of integration, stabilize the business.
Yeah. Understand, learn the business, right? Yeah.
Yep. And more longer. First 60 to 90 days, then you can start to put in some kind of short-term scale, start putting processes that grow. And then 90 plus days, that's when you can start to move things a little bit towards scale, but you're going to break the systems. You just don't know enough, frankly. And I think the hardest part about M&A right now is how much they've truncated diligence. They've gotten better. It's almost like the pendulum's switched. But in the heyday, in like 2021, the COVID times, I had someone one time tell me, "Oh, you can diligence this company in 4 weeks." I was like, "This is a 22." At that, I was a $22 million purchase price. I distinctly remember this transaction.
Whoa, 4 weeks.
And they're like, "You can do it in 4 weeks." Yeah, I was like, "No, I was like, I don't have an external advisor who can do quality of earnings in 4 weeks. There's no way, that's impossible. Everyone wanted to truncate. It's like buying a house out, looking at the foundation. Trust me, it's fine. And it's not. You gotta get, and so we just don't have enough time right now in diligence to really understand the business you're buying all the way. You're making a lot of, to your point, you're making a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, and missing so many things. Yeah, like it's a lot of assumptions. The faster you do it, the more you're going to miss, right?
That's right.
It's like driving super fast. Like you're going to miss so many things along the way because you're just moving too fast to be able to even see them. It's a perfect
That's right.
balance. So, talking about M&A and building out a portfolio of businesses, how can an entrepreneur do this without just losing control of one of the businesses or many of the businesses and burning out? And what sort of mindset shifts or things do you share with people that are acquiring multiple businesses and building a portfolio to do this successfully? What are people not seeing?
It's a great question. Well, what people are not seeing, it goes back to the square management system that I talked about. And it's the way you keep control, the way you have confidence that you don't lose it, is you take the time to know the operating systems that you want to have in the business to determine how it processes, how it's managed. You put the guardrails in. And I think a lot of people, when they buy a company, have grandiose ideas about what it means to own and to operate a company. And when I started my career, my youth, in the sports world, which is extremely fast paced. I had no guidance, no mentorship, no MBA, nothing. I had to figure out how to manage all those people's and places and things in a short period of time. And you can lose your head, to your point. You can get lost in how am I going to keep, there's too many pieces here. There's too much going on. Systems and processes can create that level of guardrail, that framework to give you the confidence that the company's going to be okay, especially if you train everyone around the frameworks and the systems that you want to see. And so I think that is, to me, the biggest thing that I see is we don't fully understand all the systems and all the processes that you need to properly run a company to keep everything from going awry. And if you just step back and you put those things in place and you give people, it's not binary, because nothing in life is binary, but give people a box, or as I call it, the square for the square management system. Give people a square to play in. And if you trust them to play inside that box, that square, they're and not go out. Or if they go outside of it, they'll ask you. And then you have something worthy to talk about. But if they can just stay within it, they can go off and run, and you don't need to actually micromanage anybody. And so I think we forget that a lot, that the value of putting in systems and processes in complete fashion. Someone told me something one day a while ago, and they said a strategy around how to run a company is better than not having one. And in my view, you might as well have one that works. And to me, that's the square management system. That is the process that gives you the control to make sure you don't lose your head.
Yeah, I love that. The way I think about it is that if you've got this box that you want your team and everybody to play in and run the systems the way they're supposed to be run to be able to grow the business, as an executive, everybody plays in the box, but you can play outside the box and think outside the box and then bring these new strategies in and test things outside the box and bring them into the box, or work with people outside the box to try and experiment and test new things. And then once you find something that stacks up and works, bring it in and add that to the square management system, right? That's
right.
How founder I believe should work.
Yeah, the system's meant to ebb and flow with the company, in a sense that those boxes, the sides of the box, they need to be rigid until you decide until as a group you communicate intentionally that the one side's going to change.
Yeah.
You don't want to pull a Cracker Barrel in the United States and change your logo and not realize the value proposition of your identity. I think that's a mistake, but you should be able to modify your systems as the business matures to help your company scale with it. For founders, for smaller businesses who want to scale, you actually start with a bigger box when you start your company to allow for that ebb and flow. And then as you need to, you can kind of constrain those processes and those systems to get yourself that control that you need as it grows. Not every company needs to be super loose. There are some companies that, like regulatory needs, hospitals, for example, this doesn't work for, because my sister's a doctor. if you deviate from the protocol, someone dies, right? You can't have that in a hospital, right?
Too high, yeah.
Right. My gut is that most people listening to this podcast are not in that scenario. They're in a more of a loose environment where they have the luxury of choice on how constrained they make their environments. But when you're starting and scaling, you need to be a little bit more loose. I would argue, by the way, what are the four sides of the box? Identity, that's kind of who you are as a business. There's 10 elements in each of these, by the way. They're all connected. Instruction, that's how you operate. That's the nature of your onboarding in your systems. Intercommunication, that's how you interact, how information flows through the business. And then information feedback, that's kind of how you take all the data points and then determine, are you on track or not? But also how you evolve. To your point, can we go outside the box, listen to what our customers are saying, our employees are saying, and apply those learnings back to the square, and you change the side. Not each side doesn't need to be the same. I would actually argue you probably want to be somewhat more rigid with your identity to a degree, because that's what really matters. Your identity is what attracts people to things. That's where I think Cracker Barrel went awry, right? They didn't really understand their identity, and
that's where the vision comes from as well, which it should be the top, which lends to all the other things, like communication is all around vision and everything like that.
Identity. All the other ones that frankly flow from identity, but then instruction should be somewhat moderate. You need to give people enough playroom to figure it out themselves and contribute and make micro decisions, but enough to know where they can't play. And then communication's got to be free, right? You need people to have information flowing freely. This is just my view. And then in information feedback, you keep, somewhat tight, because you want to make sure you're really understanding what you're doing and how and why.
Communication, it should be, like you said, free. It should be easy and encouraged, for sure, I believe. Sure. You never want somebody just, thinking about something and never sharing it, when it could be so damn valuable, or being stuck in something and just not opening up for support. That's all I'll ever ask and finish a call with is like, what are you working on mostly now, and how can I support you best? And providing that, so people just know that it's always there. Right. I want to get to another question, which is, apart from the Square management system and the structure of a business or organization or a portfolio, do you know, and could you use an example of somebody that has been successful in building a portfolio, and what sort of characteristics or character traits do they have that you feel has allowed them to be successful in building a portfolio of businesses?
I do. I think it goes back a little bit to what I started about knowing what you're doing with the investment and knowing what you're investing in. The people that I've seen who've made really wise investments, they understood the business they were buying. There are too many cases of people who get caught especially in the tech world, with stuff that sounds great, right? Yeah. And it's a buzzword, and they really don't understand it because it's not their world. But everyone is in it. Vibe coding is a big thing right now. AI is all over the place, agentic, and so people get lost in stuff that sounds great, and they want to be hip and cool and say, I invested in this. They really don't understand the business they're in. Yeah. And sometimes the best investments are boring. Mm-hmm. And the people that I've seen do the best,
understandable, easy.
They're understandable. They make boring investments, but they make understandable investments, and they tend to pay off. And so the people that I've met along the way who've done very well deploying capital haven't been at the forefronts. They're not the hip, the VCs who are talking about what's new or what's cool. They're buying proven businesses that they understand.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's a perfect way to wrap up. I've just created a video around that, is how important it is just buying something that's lame and it works. And if you think about all the most successful business investors in the world, like think about Warren Buffett, and his first company he bought was a textile company. He just buys basic businesses that are understandable. The buzz and keyword around acquisitions is boring businesses, but they don't need to necessarily be boring. They just need to be so damn simple.
They need to be, you need to understand what it does and how it makes money. It goes back to the very beginning of this. How is this making money? Why is it making money? Is it defensible? And I think if you can understand those things, then you can deploy the capital. If you see the aha, it's going to work out. And sometimes seeing the aha is where other people don't. And it still could be not a boring business to your term, but it can be a very simple business or an obvious business.
Mm.
But those tend to be the ones that you can really just be successful with. And there are a lot of people too who I think have figured out where demand is, and a lot of things in that are simple. Everything is going tech, and yet at the same time, the businesses that I would be in right now, HVAC, infrastructure, plumbing, those trades. There's so much demand for those types of businesses right now, because there just aren't enough people who are doing it, and you don't realize how much you need someone in the trades until you need someone in the trades, and then you see the value of those businesses. So I think we just got to step back and really take a better look at what else is out there beyond just the buzzwords in AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of my audience, pretty much all of my audience, have come from looking at offline businesses and have decided to buy an online business so they can have some more autonomy, location independence, and all that sort of stuff, depending on like what the business, an offline business, looks like. But just to give an example of a lame online business, it doesn't need to be something that is riddled with AI and LLMs that you don't understand, and complexities. It doesn't need to be some crazy new tech. It can just be a basic media business, like a newsletter that sends out a newsletter every week or multiple times a week. It could be just a YouTube channel. I mean, it's simple. It makes money by producing content. So basic. E-commerce businesses. There's complexities of some e-commerce businesses, but something that just sells like soap, simple, right? So I just want to give those examples as well for the online.
Yeah, and there's tons of services businesses too that have great online components, by the way.
Yeah.
It might have the human touch behind it, but there's a lot of dispatch and route optimization and communication online businesses that help connect all of those field workers. And there's a wonderful world, especially as an investment banker. The best part about being an investment banker were all the businesses that I got exposed to and all the industries that you never knew existed, that someone had solved a problem for you. And you're like, I didn't know that someone did that. And they had made a life's work out of building something that you never knew was a need. And that's probably the coolest part about this world. Is for your listeners who are looking at buying companies, the person you're buying from went out there and built something, spent their life doing it, and created something of value. And a lot of times it's in a world that you never thought there would be a need for. And that, to me, that's just the heart of, of business and value creation, is finding those unique gems in the world. And that's what makes this job great.
Yeah, I agree. I love that too. People have just done some amazing things, found a need and solved it. And it can just be the simplest business model. Matt, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you. townsquare-advisors.com is where we can send people. I'll put a link in the show notes. Is there anywhere else people should reach out or get in contact with you?
That's the best place to learn about the Square management system. There's a free quiz there for the audience. If you really want to get in and understand, like, what is the best environment for me to work? There's an online quiz for you. If you're an executive, like, hey, I need to really fix my business, you can go in there. And if you want to deep dive into the whole system and get into the weeds on all 40 elements, you can do that as well. A lot of information on townsquare-advisors.com.
Cool. Love it. Thanks so much for coming on, Matt. Everybody is listening. Thank you. And I'll see you guys on the next one.
Appreciate it, Jaryd.